Hello, welcome to the listening show, a show you can listen to. Cut to me. Walter says in a quiet voice, Zach. Zach responds wistfully.
What? I'm sleeping.
Walter responded to the snoring pile of sweats. Zach, it's about time again for us to speak words and for those to take them in.
What? Speak words?
Yes.
What is the function of this word speaking?
The function of word speaking is we will say sweet, wistful things into one's ear, into many an ear. And an eye will look onto our YouTube and they will take it and they will say, it's a good thing we listened.
Oh, thanks for the sleeping story.
No. You're supposed to wake up, actually.
I'm sleeping now. Yeah. That's fun.
Well, yeah, welcome to the listening show. A show you can listen to. We are back after, was it like 5 days?
Yeah, it was probably our longest break since starting this. I felt eager to get back here, but for reasons, we had things to do and everything. But we're back as soon as we could. And we're happy about it.
And of course, as always, we added a bunch of other stuff to our setup. Not really. Let me put the camera over there. We have 3 nicer cameras that aren't great, but they're better than what we had before. And they're kind of, as you can see. And then, as you may have noticed, the table grew by a number that is multiple of 2. We have 2 tables now to give us more table space because we were getting really crammed.
Yeah. It's funny what a little sunlight and water does. Table just grew. Magic.
Zach's camera looks good. Mine looks not as good. The third camera looks fine. It actually looks like if we made this black and white or added a green effect, it would look like a camera that someone placed to search for ghosts and left it in the room and you go back and watch that footage. That's what that camera looks like to me. It's not good.
We should put it on night vision it's just completely it's completely washed out.
And then I'll put like a silhouette black hole shape over it like it's looking through a peephole.
And then we put a doorbell just because that's what they're for.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So it's not the best, but it's better than what it was, and this Pokemon, the listening show, is evolving. So, well, I believe our topic today is evolution and intelligent design.
Yeah, it sounds all fancy, like we know what we're talking about. And we do for 100%. We know everything about how the world was created, and we know everything. So this is the place to come and learn and be educated and 100% factually accurate and totally not biased.
Yeah, we're going to give our opinion. I mean, we're going to give all the facts as they are, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
No, I think we're so excited because we grew up in a different way than most people grow up. And so our perspective is like different, but we both are genuinely like, we're just going to be talking about ideas about what our impression is about how maybe the world began. And we have some predetermined, like some things, like ideas about the theology maybe behind it, if it's intelligently designed, how it was, and if it evolved, how that would have happened. We're going to just kind of explore, and we're glad you're here to listen to that.
Wouldn't you think that most people think that, I want to say it this way, believe in evolution? Wouldn't you think a majority of people believe in evolution?
Yes.
Yeah.
So evolution is a broad term, and there's several kinds of evolution.
That's what I meant when I said I didn't want to just call it people who believe in evolution. That's like many worms,
Sure.
But
there's a good way we can categorize it, and the way that I always learned about it, there's 2 different kinds of evolution. There's microevolution, which is provable and something you can see.
It's observable.
Yes, because it can happen in the blink of in a day. Like if you're a plant, you can watch a plant.
It can
grow.
happen in the blink of a day.
In the blink. Yes. And then macroevolution, which is the idea that species can be not interchangeable, but they can change from one species to another species.
I believe the term is change of kinds. That's macroevolution. Microevolution is a change of what's the word? Breeds, types.
Yeah, there's a lot of words.
There's a right word for it, but
and so your first statement was we think most people. You'd say most people believe in evolution, and I would say almost everybody believes in microevolution, and the people who don't are probably not really in tune with science because that's proved. Like there's things that change.
Oh man, we're gonna get into it though. It's gonna be like, well, what is science? what has science proven, and it's going to start getting really divisive, not necessarily between us, but between two people who are listening, if that makes sense.
Well,
because not everybody agrees. And
yeah, and I mean, you said it. No, I was gonna just obviously we're not here to ruffle anybody's feathers or anything. We actually are curious. First of all, I'd be fine to be completely wrong if I figured out what the right answer was. But throughout my high school years, it was one of my biggest passions, I would say, in life was like history and how it came to be, how we got here, how the world changed and evolved over time and things like that. And it's like, as a huge passion of mine, I was just driven to learn everything I possibly could about how it might have started. And part of it is because we believe in God. There's a lot of dispute amongst, Christians, and especially between Christians and we would say a good chunk of scientists, that basically the argument is, well, the Bible says this thing about how the world was created, and that's obviously a little fantasy-like. It's a little fairy tale sounding, and it's really simple, like way oversimplified. Like there's no way that the earth was created that like easily or calmly. And so it's anyway, all that to say there's many varying opinions, and I'm sure that we'll get into that. So how do you want to start this?
Oh, I don't know how to start it, but one thing I was thinking was, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not one of those people. And I think if someone claimed to know all the answers, between that person and someone who says they don't know everything, I'd like to listen to the person who doesn't know everything. Hopefully you're in the same boat, because that's who I claim to be. I'm not telling you like it is, just what I think about it.
I do know everything,
right.
But I know why you would want to.
This is
no,
how it is.
Of course. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay.
I'm totally with you. And this is, again, I think I said in our first episode, we'd like this podcast to be a place to explore ideas and like even theoreticals that people are like, that's definitely not true. We'd like, heck, why not just go into it for the story of it? Like, let's pick out the fantasy part of it. Like, yeah, Robin Hood wasn't real, but it was a cool story. And if it was real, it would have looked like this. Was Robin Hood real? I don't know. No,
I wonder.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people. It's like
I doubt it. I'm guessing no.
Okay.
Well, we could start from the beginning, or I was thinking there are different just things we could attack. So one, for example, is, looks like you had something on your mind. I was just thinking, hey, when I put my hand up, the white balance is good. And then it goes back to looking like The Simpsons. One thing we could attack or talk about is, for example, the Big Bang. Mm-hmm. The Big Bang is more or less an evolutionary idea. And I know, as an example, that was one of those things where people who believe in evolution and those who believe in intelligent design inversely would argue and say, well, this either proves or disproves. But now it's one of those things where, I don't suppose that it necessarily shoots down either one of those two. For example, Big Bang, the idea in a evolutionary way is that there was nothing, and I can't remember. It just was whatever, and exploded. And the evidence of that is the fact that everything is spreading apart from some center that I don't know. Mm-hmm. Well, inversely, doesn't mean that who's not to say that that's how it was created. I mean,
sure. I'm totally with you. Yes, people like to butt those two against each other. The idea that the world was created, and I don't know how they think God would have done it.
Yeah,
like
if they say God only creates this way.
Right. I was gonna say, if God, because like the people who don't believe in a Big Bang, like what do they think God did? They think he just painted like in 3D and like had a good time that day. But like I don't like what's to say that he didn't just make a Big Bang?
And one day there was light. One day, boom.
Yeah, just,
I mean, who's to say?
Yeah. I don't know.
That's how we are, I guess, is like, who's to say? But some people are like, no, it is or it isn't.
Well, and it actually does make sense if it was a Big Bang because if for both sides, because if all substance was compressed into a tiny, like the tiniest little thing, and then it just couldn't contain it anymore, and it just exploded into everything. That makes sense on the how would you say, non-theological level, science wise. But then it also makes perfect sense if, the Bible says, in the beginning there was nothing, And then he said, let there be light. And so it's like, that makes sense too. It's like, let's just make stuff. Here it comes. That makes sense. If that's a day one.
You said it 3 times and I was thinking about it. Maybe we can follow this train of thought. You said it makes sense. Well, for me, it doesn't have to make sense. And someone's going to go, what? And I go, well, you explain everything. I don't know everything. I'm okay with that. I accept it. Some people can't accept that. They have to say, no, I have the answers. And I believe this is why things are. And I think that's important because not everything will ever make sense to anyone. And number 2, whether you believe in intelligent design or evolution, there are things that require a lot of faith because you don't know. And that's why it's fun to talk about.
Yeah. But I totally am with you with that too. I tend to think it's a lot cooler when things make sense. So I don't want to just poop on those people who want things to make more sense. Like in that case, it can't really because it's too long ago. People don't really know. You can't know unless you were there. But I think evidence is super important, and you can look at things around you and you can see that the universe is expanding, and the Big Bang. If the Big Bang starts at a center and expands outward, then it would make sense that the universe is still expanding because explosions go out. That's all I'm saying when I say it makes sense. Like that part, I'm with that.
And then a thought on that is, you turned into a Simpsons character, by the way, when you moved. Now I'm also yellow, so it is an auto sensing thing we can't control. So that's too bad.
I'm yellow.
You look
too.
fabulous, but now you look like the Simpsons.
That's okay. I don't mind being yellow.
So, 2 opposing things. I'm going to call this observable evidence. We want to call this facts. I want to pick apart the word facts. Facts versus your beliefs. I like to think in our case, I like to think that we start with the facts and we go, okay, what can we make sense out of this? And there are 3 ways in my mind, 3 ways about going through navigating these 2 things. One is you believe all this stuff and the facts that you observe, you make them fit in your beliefs. Or you have these facts and your beliefs are based entirely off of what you think is true. Or you're in the middle and you compromise. You go, well, I didn't believe in the Big Bang because I believe in creation, but the evidence showing that there was an epicenter. Okay, how do I incorporate that? So it's kind of interesting. It's one of those 3. I'm going to be honest and say I'm pretty much in the middle. Where are you on those 3?
I was just going to say there's a good word for that thing that you're describing, where you have a different standpoints where you start from. Whether you start with the evidence and work back, or you start with the theology and work forward. I would say both of those 2 are dogmatism. Basically, that's basically what they are. It's like I'm married to this, independent of facts or information from the other side. And I would say that's just the kind of dogmatic viewpoint for learning things. I think that's the word you were looking for. Jump in and tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, just ways of thinking and believing.
If you have a starting point and you say, I'm going to start with this, and if it doesn't align with this, then I let it go. Let's say you started from the point of whatever the Bible says about creation is completely true. I would say that's dogmatism. That's saying I'm not going to take anything
because you're
else.
not able to accept new information, basically.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if you were to say, I only believe in the evidence I see, that's also dogmatism, because there's a whole lot of evidence you probably don't see or you can't see because it was too long ago. That kind of thing. That's also a dogmatic way to look at it. Now, evidence as far as what you see seems to be the best metric for dogmatism if you were going to be dogmatic about it, but we like exploring in ways that aren't necessarily, we have to stick to the facts that you see right now. So we might need a little bit of grace from the audience to listen to us kind of ramble on, because we're going to probably make a couple
there's
jumps.
So many worms. Yeah, here's another jump if you're ready for one.
Yes.
So I was thinking about I was about to pick apart faith. You kind of picked apart evidence and called it dogmatism. I'm paraphrasing a bit. What about you could pick apart science? And a quick way to say that is, I think a lot of people believe in science as if it's truth, or they're trying to find, this is again, talk about belief versus evidence. They use science to try to find the answers that they want that fit their beliefs. Whereas I believe science, in analogous terms, should be a lens or a microscope. It's a tool that we use to observe. That's how I think it should be. But some people go, no. Actually, there's evidence of that. some science students, whatever, when they are being taught, it's like, hey, if you find evidence of this, you have to disregard it because that's not like, well, what is that? You're not allowed to take in new information. That's dogmatism.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and
which bugs me.
So further than that, even like that's a great way of saying it where you say, let me think if I can remember exactly how you said it. You basically said people like to think of science as if it is fact. And what you're basically saying is, or like science is truth. That's one way of seeing it. But like you said, science can be a tool to find truth, I think is a better way of saying it. It's
science isn't truth. It's a tool.
Correct. And I agree with that completely because science is really a process. It's a good way of thinking, basically. It's what science is if you boil it down, is science is what like thinking from point A to point Z. You go from the beginning to end and you cover all these bases. It's just basically thinking in the cleanest way you can because it's exploring. You make the theory, then the theory becomes the hypothesis, then the theory. It goes through the scientific method. That's essentially what science is.
What is a scientific method? Hypothesis, and then there's something, and then there's a theory, if I remember right.
Hypothesis.
The theory, when people always said about me for a long time, I have a theory about it. Like, no, you don't have a theory. You don't even have a hypothesis yet.
Right. Hypothesis, I think, it's either the first or the second step.
I think it's the first one. I think that's just what you postulate, and it's had absolutely no measures taken to prove it yet. That's just an idea. A hypothesis is an idea. The theory has been tested a lot, and it's basically almost true, but it's not true yet because I can't remember what makes it true. But getting a hypothesis to a theory, easy. Getting a theory to become law is very, very difficult.
Yes.
I don't remember anything else, but I remember that.
Well, and I actually have, and maybe this is going off on another tangent, but I think it's important we talk about the scientific method just really quick. I actually think the scientific method is slightly flawed because they make a presumption that's a pretty big presumption, and it's that you can come up with an ultimate fact. Because if you think about things, and this is getting a little bit existential, but think about just a minute. Think about if you have this theory and every bit of information you've found in every metric you can find it points that it's true. And then you figure out something else about reality, it can become not true. I get it. Especially if people don't even part of the metrics for it becoming a fact is that you've tried everything you can to disprove it.
Up to that point.
Now, what I have a problem with as far as what people presume and, postulate about the beginnings of the earth is they couldn't have possibly tried every way to disprove the theory of evolution as it is right now. There is too many things you can do to disprove it. That would be probably pretty impactful is the way I'll say it. I think that there's plenty of ways that people can try to disprove evolution and the evolutionary theory as it's taught in public schools right now. All that to say, they do technically call it a theory still. They call it the evolutionary theory, which is good. I think that's the correct way to call it and it's a good theory. It obviously stands up and a lot of people use it to base their careers off of. And then that's why it gets into the sort of political realm almost because once a theory becomes your source of income and how you live day to day, you don't really treat it like a science. You don't really treat it like science in its truest form where you try to disprove it anymore. You want to, it now is a cornerstone for your life and your welfare.
I have two thoughts if I'm not interrupting you.
You're good. You're good.
Shoot. I've got to go back and then try to remember this first one. Can you remember the very last thing you said? It's a career and you don't want to disprove it. Okay. That's my second thought. The first thought was, shoot. It had to do with redoing what I said. I forgot to jump on.
Was it about the theory at the end?
Yeah, it was me saying again that it's so hard to get a theory to become law. But if it is law, it can be demoted or disproven to become theory again, demoted. And I don't know an example of something where that's happened, but there is a process where it can't become law and it's law because, and I don't know what the criteria is, it has worked 100% of the time for however long. And we're going to just work with this now. And yes, I understand it could become disproven because there's no way we know everything. Okay. People depending on evolution as they know it to work the way that it is to make their living are not at all incentivized to challenge it, which I think is unfortunate because I think the best ideas are the ones that are always tested and tested the hardest. like evolution or any idea. Any idea is stronger when it takes challenges and stuff. And so I think, unfortunately, evolution is not being challenged as hard as it should be. I think it's just simple enough. Speaking broadly, the career one was kind of an interesting way to take it, but broadly, why would we when it's working for us?
Sure.
Right?
It's a good placeholder.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe placeholder is the right word. It fills in the gaps for most of us. So why would we cause a fuss and think about something else? Because anything is worth thinking about. I don't know.
I'm totally with you there. Should we? Okay, before we get too in the weeds about all the politics of that kind of science, do we want to explain our beliefs as briefly as possible with the caveat that we don't know? Do we want to do that?
Briefly? Okay.
Well, because I want to make sure that our listeners don't.
Listeningers.
Yeah, sorry. I want to make sure people don't feel like we're. First of all, we're not trying to change anybody's mind. We're just a couple of bozos that don't know anything. But we also want you to know
when I grab the camera, you better change your mind if you don't.
Yeah.
No, obviously.
But I think we would be doing a disservice to talk about the stuff without first kind of giving at least generally what we think happened.
Well, it's kind of coming to light, isn't it? But yes, we should more or less talk about what we believe.
I'll put myself out there first if you'd like. I tend to think my impression is that so growing up, I was homeschooled, and my grandfather is a scientist, and he used to be an evolutionary scientist. He went to college.
This is not going to be a quick story. I'm just letting everybody know.
I'll make it quick. I'm just going to give my background. My grandfather did a lot of science growing up, and he got degrees in science, and he used to be a scientist, and he was an avid believer in everything evolutionary. And then he changed his life and he became a Christian, and he began looking into the creationist viewpoint. And now he's a hardcore creationist, like hardcore. And he did a lot of my science teaching growing up because my mom was not much of a scientist, and it wasn't really her forte as far as teaching. And she wanted us to give us a good education. She wanted to give us a good education. So she didn't offload it, but she brought my grandfather in to teach us.
Delegated it.
She delegated granddad to come teach us science. And so I was taught growing up, essentially, that creationism is completely correct. And they have there's a ton of books out there that give a good narrative for why creationism can be 100% accurate. It leaves some questions, that's to put it lightly. So growing up, as soon as I got out of high school and was done homeschooling and I went to college, I took a world prehistory class, because part of when I learned creationism growing up was actually what evolutionists believe and why, because they wanted to give us a good education. So I actually know what evolutionists believe pretty good as well. But then I also wanted to take a world prehistory class from someone else just to see if there was any biases, or is that the word?
I don't know.
Yeah, if there were any biases from learning from a creationist about the evolutionary viewpoint. So took this world prehistory class, and it was so interesting because a lot of it was like, it seemed kind of the same way in a weird way. It seemed like a story, because they both creation as a story and evolution as a story. They seem so distant and far away that it's hard to look at either one of them like it's right here and it's facts, if that makes sense. What that class did for me more than anything was sort of separate me from any comfort I had about my knowledge about the beginning of the earth. Made me realize, we're just really far away and we're probably not going to be able to tell for sure. That said, my impression is, my first impression is that the Bible's more right than it's not. Maybe it speaks in it. Well, it certainly doesn't speak in scientific terms. Maybe a day is not a day in science. And I know you can murder me for that, but who knows what the first day is when God talks about the creation of the world. Anyway, all that to say, I still don't know. My impression is that the Bible's more right than it's not, because, some evidence that the Bible does give in a narrative kind of way aligns up with what we see in the world. And if you asked me to prove anything, I couldn't. I could give you some evidence and I could tell you some things, but I'm not here to prove my belief today or defend it. I'm just making sure that people are aware. That's my preconditioned position, if that makes sense.
Interesting story. I have a story, but it's much shorter than your short story.
Make it long, please. I don't want to be the one. Sorry. I want you to tell it.
I think this goes back to start the story to what I was saying before about the facts, your beliefs, and what's in the middle. I believe what I believe because it's the best sense I can make of what I know. I like to think it's how most people live. I don't think whatever you believe in, creation, evolution, I would hope no one believes in it because it's dogmatic, because they were told to believe it, and they're just trying to fit the evidence and cram them into their belief system. I don't think that's a wise way to live, but what?
I wanted to hit the applause button.
Go ahead then.
Wait, I got to remember. Yes, dogma is no friend of either of us. I did not mean to interrupt.
No,
I just
okay.
wanted to say that for sure. I don't want people so locked up in their belief they can't be taught anything new.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so anyway, back to that. I believe what I believe because it's the best sense I can make of what I know. And so yeah, I think if anybody said that, if someone said that about evolution and they go, oh, this is true for me because this is what I've seen, and I go, okay, well, I can't dispute that. Mm-hmm. I can respect that too. Anyway, I believe what I believe, which is things were created, intelligent design. There's a purpose. Shoot, you'd have to prod me. I feel like I'm just be saying redundant stuff at this point.
Do we want to? Okay, what I don't want to do necessarily is I don't want to hardcore prod all the way down the list of things we believe that the Bible says. I think generally we trust it. Tell me if that's your position too.
Yeah. The whole reason for starting this topic though is because you said you want us to describe what we believe in. And so I more or less believe the same thing you believe in. So we have to, if we're going to keep going at it, what we believe in is the earth is what, 7,000 years old, 10,000? Can't remember.
I think the biblical creationist point of view is that it's roughly 7,000 years old.
Can I jump off of it a little bit, or do you want to keep going down? Well, okay.
Go ahead.
So what was one of the things I attacked? The Big Bang. Here's another one, carbon dating. And
yes.
This one taps into a lot of what we were talking about, dogmatism, science as a tool. You can push your own button.
Carbon dating. Go ahead.
Anyway, I used to know more than I know now about it. And it was one of the things that really, man, I bet you know more than I do. It was one of the things that when I looked at it, I was like, what the?
Yeah. Carbon 14. Are you kidding me? Carbon 14 is a joke. I'm not a scientist. You actually said it too. I used to know a lot more than I do now. I think one of the biggest things about when I talked about the scientific method kind of getting cast aside because of the politics and because people trying to save their jobs and things, and people treating evolution like it's fact. I think a huge problem I have with people doing that is because they just completely ignore all of the crazy factors that come into like how much you have to trust carbon dating. Almost everything, every old thing is dated with carbon dating. Yeah. Or with rock layers. And rock layers,
that's what I meant by carbon dating, is the layers in the earth.
Well, carbon dating is actually a process. There's a machine. You put whatever, you take a sample, you put that sample into a machine. And what it does is this machine detects the carbon and it detects the decay, the radioactive decay of this object. And I could tell you a lot more of it when I was younger. But then with this machine, they can detect roughly how long it must have taken to decay this much radioactively. Yeah. The problem with that is radiation changes constantly. Because the sun is changing constantly, the atmosphere is changing constantly, weather, all of that stuff. And people treat it like it's like this really strict thing. Like it's always been the way it is now radiation wise. A little bit of radiation can completely warp something that's really, maybe you bury this piece of like tooth or something in the ground and you just expose a bunch of radiation to it. And that machine will tell you that thing is 70 million years old.
What I was going to say is somebody solved for X, however they did that, and plugged that in the machine. X is this many millions.
Yes.
And now every layer is this many millions. And it's just the science now. And all of our beliefs are stacked up on these layers that were made or whatever, however long ago. If that X was solved, or more like, okay, I'm being a bit cynical, but realistically here, think about this for just a moment as an idea. This is how I think think things are. If this radiation or whatever variables that we were not able to more accurately solve for so long ago in the future becomes, like our evidence with our better knowledge now shows that the Earth is not nearly as old as we thought. If that discovery was made by somebody, you know what would happen? What do you think would happen?
I think it gets shut down. And
Why?
That person would lose their
Why?
credentials.
Okay, I was going to try to be patronizing, but that's exactly what would happen.
Because
you're not allowed to believe that. That's why. It's simple as that. You're not allowed to believe that. You're not even allowed to find that. And that's when it gets really frustrating. You're not allowed to discover or learn things that go against the religion of evolution, if that makes sense. It's that dogmatism you're talking about.
Yes, our predispositions are leaking out a little bit. I don't want to just emanate frustration at that, but that is being honest. We're pretty frustrated that evolution it's kind of being treated like it's fact. At least in the scientific realm. Again, I'm not a scientist. I also want to make sure that people know I probably butchered the description of carbon dating. It's more complicated than that, and it's improved a lot lately, especially the last 10 years. The methods they use have improved a lot. The problem is you can't track objects that are that old for that long. Like especially if they put in a substance in the ground for testing purposes 10 years ago, and then they pulled it out and they dated it, it'd probably be exactly to the moment it got buried. It's so accurate in that respect. The problem is that the Earth emanates radiation from the core. I talked about all these variables that can change. Things can get buried and reburied, and floods can happen, and storms and hurricanes. And the world is a little bit like this crazy ball of nonsense that's constantly changing. And yeah, I've already basically said this, but that there's almost every indication other than the physical evidence of like the world around you, where you can see degradation of rivers, decomposition of different items and things like that. And you can date based on how that kind of goes. There's not a lot that goes beyond 10,000 years that's not using carbon dating. I'm trying to summarize our problem with it as good as possible. Well, Tell me if I did a poor job.
I don't think I can contribute to that. You just expanded on my frustration with the religion of evolution.
More or less. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way I understand it.
And that's being, I want to say unfair, but those are my frustrations, because I know not everybody is like that. I understand that. I want to jump back for a second when I was trying to talk about why I believe what I believe. It's because of how I'm able to make sense of what I have observed. For me, and I'm sure this is true for lots of people, I look at the way things are and I go, no way. No way that's random. That doesn't make any sense to me. And well, maybe I'm a fool. Maybe, oh, nope, you're just a bag of meat and that's it. And you're these thoughts and seeing the way trees work and how creatures work with the ecosystem and how impossible that must have been to have evolved the way it did. At some point, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't have enough faith to believe in evolution.
Yeah.
That's an interesting conversation, not debate. Which one takes more faith? Believing that there's an all-powerful being out there or that everything is random? They both take a lot of faith.
A lot of faith. Both of them.
But for me, it's much easier to believe. Now, I'll say this too. It's a lot easier for me to believe in creation. But I totally understand in another way why it's really easy to believe in evolution. It absolves you. I'll say it does. It can absolve you of all responsibility. And man, I wish I could live that way.
Yeah.
But I have seen The Matrix and I'm aware of the consequences now. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I know exactly what you mean. I totally get what you mean. I was going to say something cool, but I can't remember what it was now. I think it had to do with, you said something so specific. It was...
You'd have to help me out.
Tell me what you just said. Repeat what you just said again.
I've seen The Matrix. Animals and bugs and the way they work with the ecosystem.
It takes faith.
Takes more faith.
I remember what it was now. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I want to credit evolution and the theory with this. It is so interesting.
It is.
It is so interesting. I remember when I was a kid and learning about evolution.
I love that story.
Yeah.
It's like creation.
Yes.
I love that story because that's what it is.
Okay, so think about the beginning of the earth, creationism, evolution, but like think of them as narratives. Evolution's way more interesting.
Yeah, like if I had to have one book to tell my kids and it's literally has no value other than to be entertaining, I love evolution more. It's way more interesting.
Like you're
the hero. You're the hero of that story, by the way.
Yeah,
evolution. It's all about you and how special you are. I mean,
that's a good observation.
That's why I think it's so easy to believe.
Yes,
it's like there is no purpose but whatever I want.
That,
you know what
and
I mean?
There's like more lore. If you think about what evolution is, it's like all this lore, and it's like in 10 million years ago this happened, and then dinosaurs 50 million, and then 500 million this happened. It's like wow, there's like a whole thing. Yes, meteors. So that's one thing. Even as a kid, I remember when I believed fervently the Bible's right about everything. That I was like, but evolution is cooler. Like I wish that was true, because like the Bible has like 2 pages on it, and then it's just done. It's not a lot of scientific terms. There's not a lot of lore. It's in the beginning, God made it, and he tells you what happens. Yeah.
You said, oh, shoot, what'd you say? It was a rendition of what I said. I wish evolution was true.
Yeah.
That's what you said. Yeah. And it's like when I said, I get why it's easy. I wish it was true too, man. That'd be easier. That'd be easier for me to live in this world with that.
So again, just to clarify, it could be, we might be dead wrong. That's not our impression, but yeah, we wish. Yeah. No. The other thing about it was, I also want to clarify that I am not a denier of the events that people say happened in history. I think like people have all these awesome stories. I've listened to scientists, and I still listen to a ton of evolutionary scientists because they're so good at their jobs. I think the dates might be a little off. That's all. But like when they talk about, like the when like in Canada and Russia got combined because of the ice and the ice age and things like that. And then all these floods and how like the Sahara used to be this vibrant, like wonderful land where everything was changed. I think, the world could have changed a whole bunch in, 7 to 10,000 years. If that timeline is right that the Bible says, I think all that stuff totally could have happened. I mean, you see how quickly the world is changing right now when people talk about global warming, and people are freaking out because it's so different and we're ruining everything. And maybe we are. Be responsible still. Again, I'm not saying I'm not a global warming denier. It's definitely warming. But maybe it's supposed to be warming because things kind of change. The earth is always sort of just changing, and then habitats are evolving to be something different, and then it's switching and things are polarizing, and even the magnetic poles change. They say they're predicting the North and South Pole, the magnetism will reverse in like the next decade, and compasses will just flip. Because like that's just what happened. Like things just change in the world. There was tell me if you want to jump in at any time, but I was listening to, who was I listening to? I cannot remember who it was now, but there was a podcast that came out just recently. It might have been the Joe Rogan podcast with Alex Jones actually, which was so entertaining. But Alex Jones was talking about global warming, and that guy's crazy. So that's another caveat. But he was saying a bunch of stuff, and his point was like, yeah, it's definitely warming, but it's supposed to be because the warming makes the plants grow better, and then the plants growing better makes more oxygen. And I was like, whoa, it does sort of balance out that way. But if people keep wrecking the plants, then, that's still bad for everybody. But that was like the sort of base. His argument was that, yeah, it's supposed to be warming because plants need to grow, and plants definitely grow better when there's more carbon dioxide. And then when there's more carbon dioxide and more plants, then there's more oxygen, and everything balances out. But I don't know. I don't know anything about that. That was just an interesting little side thing. What do you think about that?
I don't have any thoughts about that.
Okay.
I was trying to think desperately of what topic.
I have no idea about global warming, by the way. That's not, I don't even have an impression with that. We have impressions about what we think happened with creation because of our beliefs, but I have no idea. There's too many crazy factors with global warming to know. There's like the freaking sun. It's like shooting freaking plasma beam rays at us all the time. And then like volcanoes erupting and launching like a crazy ton of carbon dioxide into the air. I don't know. There's like just stuff crazy happening.
Here's another historic event, whatever, to attack the flood.
The flood. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm thinking of 2 or 3 different things. So the Grand Canyons, what's the story on that? For example, I think the idea is that they've eroded because of water, but they say it's taken millions of years or something like that.
That was an old presumption. I think now they acknowledge that was definitely a flood. Like you look at the patterns and the way that the layers are like swishing around and stuff, it's like, that's a flood. But there's also some decomp and some erosion from the rivers flow naturally. Along
with the flood, Pangaea.
Oh yeah, we could talk about Pangaea.
The idea of the supercontinent.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how Pangaea as an idea was proposed. I think it was, I want to say it's an evolutionary idea. I think it was a fairly recent idea, right? As recent as 50 years. I could be dead wrong. Who knows?
I think that actually, I think that I have the answer. And the proposition's been around forever throughout human history. There's a lot of old reports from like Alexander's library that talk about a supercontinent, and they called it Pangaea. So the name is a really old name, and it talks about when the lands were won. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
continue.
I was just going to say
it's an old theory, but people kind of readopted it recently.
Well, what's the modern theory about how Pangaea came apart? What's that idea? Because for me, I have to think, based on what I know, which is obviously very limited, if the flood happened and there was Pangaea, then the flood is probably responsible for the separation or is in some way included in why the continent was cut up. And I don't know why I have this idea. I'm going to give a quick analogy why this sounds stupid. I remember for like a few years as a kid, when I would drink water, I used to imagine like falling down on my heart and then falling down the bottom of my stomach. And then one day I'm like, wait a minute.
I know better.
I have a throat. I forgot all about that. My heart's not floating in midair, like that same thought. So anyway, for some reason, I have this thought that during the flood, water is erupting in mass raining, but also erupting from everywhere.
The depths.
Yes. And I thought, well, that's when the continents got broken up. I don't know where I have that idea from. Can't even really defend it. But my thinking is the flood and Pangaea are connected.
Yeah. The only way that a supercontinent could be broken apart is if the plates completely shifted and everything was basically broken apart. I mean, if you think about what the surface of the earth is, it's like the surface is like 1% of like the whole earth. And then beneath that, there's just like a lake of molten lava that's just huge. And so everything is kind of just sitting on like a whole bunch of lava. And theoretically, if the crust was to break up, they call it the crust.
Yeah.
If the crust was to break up a whole bunch and there's like all these cracks, then it could shift around on that lava like nobody's business. But that would cause a whole bunch of water to get a lot of places because there's a lot of water on top of the crust. And it would make sense how if there's a bunch of rumbling and everything's breaking and cracking and crumbling in the crust, then a whole bunch of stuff just kind of goes everywhere.
This is around the flood too. The idea of, and this isn't specifically what I want to talk about, but it is connected, the water canopy theory.
Yeah, I think I told you about that.
You did. And this is something I wondered, like, well, if the flood happened, where did all the water come from? Like, okay, so what's the name for the process by which water is brought into the air and it rains? There's a word for that. Anyway, I thought, okay, so I guess all the water came up out of the oceans and all the clouds made their way to Earth, to land. Do you remember the word?
No, I do not. I was going to say precipitation, but that's when it comes down again.
Yeah, well, I thought, okay, so how do you make so much rain that it literally covers all landmass everywhere? How is that even possible? Because that water wouldn't just like make a mini scale of it. Wouldn't that water just recede back out to the ocean? How do you make so much water on the surface of the planet that it covers all landmass? Like that's what the flood is, right? No, there was no dry land. That's how I think it went. Well, the water canopy theory would explain that.
So actually, and technically, sorry, you mind if I jump in?
Go ahead.
Technically, the ocean has enough water that it could cover it. Like, let's say a huge asteroid just hit the Earth in the ocean, then there's enough water in the ocean that it could totally cover the whole land. It would be
displaced water because of the asteroid in the ocean.
Yeah, but then everything would kind of recede back into place, which is sort of what happened, in at least in the biblical sense of the flood.
It's like put an object in a tub, take a cup full of water and dump it on that object. You haven't changed. You just displaced it. I don't know how to cover all the land. Whatever. The water canopy theory, is that what's called? The canopy theory would explain that.
There's a scientific name for it, but basically what that is, just because you brought it up and I should probably explain it, but that theory, which is just a theory, it's typically a creationist theory, but there are actually there's a lot of evolutionary scientists who tend to think that there could have been something like this too. But essentially what it would have been is it would have been like an extra layer in the atmosphere where a ton of water just got caught in Earth's orbit somehow. And basically it would have had to be disrupted, and it would wrap around the whole Earth like a big bubble. They found some gas giants and things like that have this type of thing just out in space where there's just a bunch of water that kind of rotates and floats around the Earth. But some theorists who believe in a global flood said something could have disrupted it, whether it was a solar flare, a super extra powerful one, or an asteroid or something. And once that canopy sort of gotten broke and popped, all the water sort of fell through and gravity took over, and it just may have collapsed on everything. And it basically, if there was that big of a canopy that went all around the Earth, there's two effects. Before it broke, it would regulate temperature around the world, which would mean everything would be sort of perfect temperature wise.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be sort of like making an extra greenhouse where the temperature is uniform everywhere because it's got this nice light would come in and it would reflect back and forth instead of just as it is right now coming to the surface of the Earth, and where the sun is most direct, it's the hottest there. It wouldn't be like that.
I was going to say
really nice,
a lot more habitable, and then the idea is, and then people and animals would have lived longer, would have grown larger, which is when the dinosaurs would have been there, and then after the flood, the reason that the dinosaurs couldn't stay around is because the atmosphere, the environment was completely trashed, which is a cool idea. Are you done with talking about the canopy? Go ahead. The
second thing would be, and this is the sort of thing that creationists jump on this theory for, because they said that if something like that was to be broken, it could rain basically up to 40 days, which is what the Bible says happened, which is interesting and coincidental. Maybe it's descriptive. Anyway, you brought up a cool thing, and I do want to talk about that. But when I talked about the regulating temperatures, you said things can grow up bigger. There's a ton of fossils out there that people have found where dragonflies are like 4 feet big.
Yeah.
And like all these animals that are small are just huge. And it's like, what? Why were they that big so long ago? How could they have gotten that big in the way things are?
Yeah.
So that whole canopy theory is an interesting explanation, even if you're a complete hater of everything the Bible says. It's an interesting theory for why things could have grown big, because it's such a conducive environment for things, and things could live long if everything's perfect and there's no weather. Sorry, go ahead.
I think I want to jump back to the analogy of water falling on my floating heart. And I said, "Oh, you can't cover all land mass with the water that's on Earth." Well, I guess if there was large separation and erosion in the crust and water not necessarily water erupting, the land mass is being separated, they could effectively sink. I mean, yes, you could cover more land that way, but anyway, I thought the canopy theory was very cool.
I think it's very cool too, and I that one seems like a little bit of, they take a bunch of faith, and it seems like a bit of a jump, but it's another one of those things that's like, yeah, that makes sense to me, which is kind of what,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of things make sense to me when evolution in some sense makes sense to me as proposed as a theory, because it's like, yeah, things could change over time if you give it a long, long, long time.
Let's give it I'm just coming up with these little tiny topics to kind of go on about. Let's prod macroevolution. I think I can think of two things I might want to say about that, unless you feel like you have to go first.
You go ahead.
Someone did something I thought was clever. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was pretentious, but he was going around. There's a video, some guy going around interviewing, I guess, college students and saying, man, I want to butcher it. I'll just give the punchline away because that's fun. Have you ever witnessed a change of kinds? Yeah, we've seen these birds change in these birds. Like, no, that's a change of whatever. That's the same species.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen a change of kinds? Have you seen a bird, a dragon turn into a bird, or a fish turn into a dog? Whatever that is. I can't, the actual macro. And it was like, no. And I go, do you know what it's called when you believe something that you can't observe? It's called faith.
Yeah.
But because it took me so long to get to they're like, okay, see ya. It's kind of like, I don't want to go off too far, but screw it. It's so funny. Cops were doing a bust. They were getting people who are texting and driving. And you know how they're doing in this sting? They were standing at intersections like homeless people holding cardboard signs. And the cardboard sign said, "I'm not homeless. I'm a cop looking for texting drivers."
That's hilarious.
It's so brilliant because anyone texting and driving won't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they deserve to get caught. And then they're completely explicit. Anyway, when I got the faith punch sign, I was like, ah! Yeah. It was just, it stung in a funny way. Anyhow, that was one thing. The other thing is, there are many things I can't observe, never will observe, that I believe. And there are many things that I can't observe, won't observe, that I don't believe. So in a way, on one end, you could say I'm a hypocrite for believing the things I do. And the other end, you can't tell me not to. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's all I have for now.
So you don't believe in macroevolution as a theory?
Change of kinds, like fish to dogs or whatever.
Yeah.
And no, I believe they were created, and we've had whatever kind of dog. I know about something small we disagree about. I'll try to remember that for later. But no. Dogs were made, whatever breed they look like, and microevolution has made many kinds. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there's been a change of kinds where there was a single cell which grew into this, which grew into a fish, which grew into land. Not at all.
Mm. So what that made me think, are you finished? First of all,
go ahead. Actually do this for me. Just because you're sinking so low, take your camera like this.
Okay.
And just tilt it down.
Tilt it down.
Oh, no.
Like this?
You should be able to rotate it on that axis.
Oh, okay.
You might need to use both hands, but this thing.
I'll just sit up. How about that?
Okay.
Screw you.
It's like just your head. It looks silly.
Am I too tall right now?
Yeah.
How about now?
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. So you brought up macroevolution and changing of kinds. We were talking about the flood earlier, and one big thing that evolutionists regularly malign creationists for is like, how do you fit all those animals in one boat? And it's like, well, because they only needed two of each kind.
Yeah.
And actually the Bible says that. And if you think about I saw this thing, and I used to also be even when I was a firm believer in only creationism, I remember thinking as a kid, you wouldn't fit all those animals in there, even all the kinds. There's too many kinds. And then I remember there was a distinct moment. I was 17 and I saw this picture, and it said, this is what a pug looked like 100 years ago. And I looked at the pug. I was like, it's huge. Yeah. And its nose isn't squished into its face. It looks like a lot of other dogs.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, that's 100 years ago. If you multiply that by 50, that's 5,000 years ago, roughly, when the flood is supposedly happened in Bible terms. It's like, that thing could have totally been every other dog. Yeah. If it had changed 50 times more. It looked so different. Dachshunds 100 years ago, they didn't look like the tiny little dorky miniature toy dogs that they are now. Chihuahuas didn't look like that 100 years ago. Even 100 years ago, they looked so different. They looked manlier, really. They look kind of dorky now. Yeah. Some dogs do. I love dogs, by the way. I'm not just shitting on dogs. I think that dogs can totally change a lot in 100 years. Give it 5,000, maybe there was two dogs that both look like wolves or something, that are just really kind of a mix of everything. Then those wolves made a bunch of babies that look like a bunch of different babies. Anyway, all that to say, I totally think that now I'm of the perspective that horses could have totally made a bunch of different kinds of horses. Lizards could have totally made a bunch of different kinds of lizards. Birds, of course. You go to, even Darwin's Island, where he made the theory of evolution, where there's all these finches, and he looked at how different they all were. They were all finches. It could totally be possible that a couple finches got stuck on this island a long time ago, and they just made a whole bunch of different kinds of finches that all look beautiful and colorful, and they're all so different. That's kind of what people are.
So this is kind of attached, but this is also mainly being used as a segue to that one thing I know we disagree about, but it's an interesting thing to kind of go on to. So macroevolution, I guess the reason I have a problem with it is because this is so straightforward to me that it's frustrating to me to think that people could believe otherwise, but whatever. If there was an organism that has evolved and changed like that. And we are supposedly evolving and becoming better over time, right? Genetically as humans, if we are apes. What the fuck? That would mean all that information was there to begin with. And now we're just amassing information out of nowhere. Whereas I believe it's the other way around. I believe we are losing genetic information.
Well, and that's proven. We are. Like, that's
in microbiology terms, like you can't just spontaneously create new information. But then again, if you can believe everything was spontaneously made from the beginning, I guess it would be too hard to believe that we're just amassing new genetic information out of nowhere. But
well, and I think that's a repeating pattern in we call it creation, but in the universe, as things kind of decaying and degrading away, there's not a lot of things that you see except for life, like carbon-based life. That thing is the one thing that you see grow rapidly, die rapidly. It's like a crazy cycle where everything that's made of life or carbon grows really quick, dies. But then everything else, that one of the Newton's laws, everything in motion stays in motion. Like, that's a truism. But then it's like naturally things sort of slow down and settle. And you can obviously tell that they have violent beginnings. Like if someone splashes some water. At the beginning, it's all crazy and wild, but then it eventually settles and slows into place. And that's, I think, what you're talking about when you talk about genetics. You are losing genetic information. It's the same reason that...
I think I misspoke. I think I said evolution would mean everything was there in the beginning. That's I misspoke. In the beginning, there was no genetic information, and the genetic information just amassed. And
I see.
In the creationist way, it was all there in the beginning. I did misspeak. And if that's the case, as I believe that the information was there and that we are sparse, mixed up. How do I put this? We are, in the beginning, there was red, blue, and red paint. And now there are many millions of shades made of those three colors. But over time, we are losing.
Becoming more gray.
We're not creating new information. We're not creating new information. It's just mixes of what's already there. But evolution would have to somehow postulate that no, this other color does not exist in our dimension. Just came somewhere magically. That's how I see it, and that's why it frustrates me. So let me connect this to the thing that I think we disagreed about one time.
Really quick, I'm gonna just expand on what you said. It was that losing genetic information. Another way to say that is things getting inbred. That only happens because when you pull from the same pool of things, eventually it gets like you can tell when something is too much of a thing because it loses things, like you said. So that's what inbreeding is essentially. Go ahead.
So if that all is going the way I think it did, and if Dragonfly
something we disagree about.
Yeah, I know. I think the dogs that went on the ark, for example, were the best dogs. There was more DNA in them. And the dogs we have are just leftover mixes of that. I think the further back you go, it's true for all species, including humans. I think in the beginning, humans were, I think there was these two things. I think they were large because of how large all creatures were. And I think they were especially attractive because they would have had all the DNA. I know you disagreed about the size of humans. You go, no, we've been getting bigger over time. Does that sound familiar? Because that's what.
Yes, on average. So I think you're right about that. And do you want me to go now?
Go ahead.
I think you're right. Your theory about people used to be bigger is right because there's old bones of people being bigger once upon a time. But I think because of sexual selection, people get bigger because girls pick big guys.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about people getting bigger the last couple 100 years. Is because 100 years ago, they were a lot smaller.
You mean
when the girls
foot or two?
Yeah, when the girls.
I mean, like they're probably 10 feet tall people. I don't know how big.
Oh, maybe.
Because like freaking wasp, 4 feet big. Are you joking my ass?
No, dragonflies. There's several fossils of dragonflies.
Yeah,
like
so
4 feet.
And the dinosaurs, of course.
Maybe they're just huge lizards.
Yeah, I was gonna say if they are huge lizards, then how big were people? I don't think people were stupid huge, but I'm sure they were. Like if you saw it, and I go, "What the?"
People have found some giant skeletons that have been fossilized.
Oh, it wasn't you. I was talking about this about, but the idea that humans were especially attractive, or Adam and Eve were, It wasn't you I was talking to this about, but the person I was talking to said no, because they would have had hygiene. They didn't have soap. They couldn't clean their teeth. And I go, okay, I guess there are some things that wouldn't be as good.
But they didn't have sugar and glucose either.
Exactly. They didn't have the impurities. They
didn't have bread.
They had they didn't have carbs.
Yeah,
they had really good
donuts.
They didn't have, they had, you read about the, what's the word? Routines that the princesses or whatever would have to go through, which is months long of special diets and skincare. I mean, I wonder which one's better. I assume the former is better. Skincare via completely natural substances in a very whole world that without carbs and sugar versus the scientifically advanced goos and potions. I don't know. Yeah, I can understand either, but for me, I like to think that back then, that when it was like legit, and you can still learn a lot of shit in 2,000 years. You may not have soap yet, but you can do some really cool shit with strawberries. I'm guessing. Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway. I think people have always been super smart, and they had some better ways of doing things. You know, they found like old light bulbs that were like thousands of years old, right?
Nope.
There's these old jars that were transparent that were found. They were broken because they were in the sand, but they found them in some old deserted city in a desert across the sea.
Yeah, people are smart.
And they found all this wiring, and they said this works the exact way a light bulb would work. They just don't have they don't know how they would have charged it, but they were like, it's a transparent glass bottle. There's all these wires that are left over, and they were decayed to all get out, but they were like, this looks exactly like what it would take to make a light bulb, but how are they powering it?
So here's something else. Go ahead. Oh, it's okay. I think I was interrupting. The pyramids. Mm-hmm. So that required such crazy precision to put, not just to move the blocks, to know exactly what size the block had to be before it went up and how to get it into place. And I can't remember why it was so, that's not the right word. It was really rather remarkable and almost unbelievable how they were made, that they were made at all. But people are smart. They don't need calculus. I think they were saying like, why? I can't remember why it was so special. It's like they even have math back then or whatever it was, and how they figured this stuff out. Like they, I don't know.
I know what
like,
you're talking.
Like to the like these super specific. I don't know.
Well, there's a series of calendars. It's not the Gregorian calendar, but this is another example of how people used to be smart too. We weren't always stupid. I think that people were really smart, and then they were stupid, and then they were smart again, and they were stupid again, and people go through phases. And I think right now we're in the really smart phase, heading towards a really stupid phase.
Oh, really? Because I think we're in a stupid phase, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the smart phase, I mean, it's pretty cool having technology, and it took someone pretty smart to do it. But what I was going to say is there's a lot of calendars that work better than the Gregorian calendar that were made way before the Gregorian calendar. People figured out how time works better because they watch space better than people. I mean, not better than people can now, because people watch space pretty good.
People figured out.
They figured out a lot of crazy stuff.
Where the planets are in the sky and how long a year is, all without any equipment. You know, people are smart.
Yeah, they are smart. And I think they've always been smart. I think it would be so cool to go through a library of the technology that they had in different time periods.
Yeah.
Because I tend to think that like war or famine or earth events like floods and things like that might have ruined some really good progress that people made, especially wars. Because there's been wars forever. And wars, they just tend to kill all the good people that could do a lot of good work. Even now, if you lose people in wars, you're losing something else for sure. That could really help people. Anyway, I think wars stopped a lot of progress from happening a whole lot of times before. And we're another pretty lucky thing, but I think we're pretty lucky that the wars that we have right now have not stopped creative and smart people from making what they're capable of making. It has stopped some though. Anyway, I don't know if that's where you were going with that.
No, I wasn't going anywhere. I have a possible idea for a topic or something to jump on, unless you have something you want to get to.
What you got?
Man, this is one of those things where I really wish I could have thought better and had more information before I start speaking and saying stupid stuff. But here I go.
Yeah.
The idea that people are evolved from apes bothers me for a few reasons. And inversely, I'm bothered by something that has come as a result of it. And maybe I'll jump there, but I want to stay on the first part, which is, I'll jump to the end. Okay, so please jump in and interrupt me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to understand this still. This doesn't make sense to me. Racism comes from the belief, or hating on black people. Why would you hate someone who's... Why? First of all, actually explain this. I'm not saying justified.
Because you think they're lesser genetically, or... Yeah.
And why would they be lesser genetically? Because... So go ahead.
Because they were less advanced evolutionarily.
Right. They're closer to monkeys than white people are. Mm-hmm. Right?
That's... It's an offensive proposition. And I'm not, you're not saying that at all.
And I know you're not saying it either. I'm just trying to, you're trying to help me understand. Okay.
That is to its basest racist form. That would be the argument.
Here's the problem I have with that. If you believe in evolution, that sounds exactly right. Right?
Okay. I'm going to be careful with what you're saying there. You're not saying that if you're an evolutionist, you're not saying evolutionists are racist. You're saying
no, I'm not.
Technically,
yeah.
If you believe the description of, if you believe
in change of kinds, if you believe apes turn into people, mm-hmm. then you would believe that black people are closer to apes than white people.
Okay, well, okay.
I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm trying to understand this.
To defend evolutionists again.
Yes, please do.
I'm going to try to be as fair to them as possible.
I want to be, because I want to understand.
Yes, I know you are too, and that's why I want to make sure I get this right. From my understanding about people that grew up in Africa and the culture, the people of that culture who grew up there, the reason that they oftentimes had darker skin is because of that place on Earth, I believe. I think that skin naturally adapts over time to become darker and because it does better in sunlight. I don't know for sure. So maybe the argument is that they're closer to gorillas. I hate even saying that.
I know, I hate it too, but
disgusting.
let me just take this, let me follow this thought through. We'll get back to what you were saying about where you live, but mm-hmm. My understanding, and I'll call it my understanding of evolution, is then you would believe that black people are closer to apes. And that's where racism comes from. The idea that you are better genetically, essentially. Mm-hmm. My problem is, then they're right. Then they have every reason to think that they're better because they are. They have spontaneously got, I know, just let me go on with this.
Technically. You're speaking technically.
Yeah,
yes, that's all you're saying.
Technically, that would be correct.
Yes, technically.
Which is ridiculous for so many reasons.
It is.
And it really bothers me. But...
There's obviously. Sorry, go ahead.
If you're gonna claim to evolution, why would you stop there? Why wouldn't you just go all the way and go, yeah, white people are better? Like, how can you? That's conflicting to me to believe in evolution and then not believe, because that's not what I believe.
Yeah,
we're all the same. We all come from the same place.
I mean, Asians are the best.
It's freaking skin color. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, anyway,
I get it. No, and you're right. The description. But I wouldn't attribute that to any scientist who believes that humans came from apes at all, especially in modern culture. Obviously, there's genetic differences. There are technically some things body structure wise that different. We can use the word races but people from different areas of the earth that have grown up there, their history is there. Technically, the body adapts to your environment, and so if those people and their ancestors grew up there,
Icelandic people have especially pale skin because there's less sun. They don't need to resist it as much. I get all that, and that makes sense.
Yes. So there's different benefits and detriments to different genetic.
But technically.
Yes.
Technically, it's not better. It's technically different.
Just different. Exactly. It's more. It's but perfect
if you
for that
in evolution. I don't know how you can hold both.
Well, you can.
That's what bothers me.
You can, but I see where you're going, and that is a a good observation, but I do think it's more complex than just that. I wouldn't.
I'm glad you're defending that, just because I'm trying to understand it.
I know, and I know you are. I promise you, I know there's nothing malevolent in what you're saying at all. It's just an observation of, if you think this, then you'd have to think this, right? But I don't think
I'm sure
that's
you could say
true.
the same thing about things I believe.
Yes,
Like if you believe
and they'd
in
be
this,
right to.
Yeah, and I wouldn't tell them to shut up because I want to think about it. I want to understand it.
I want to take in this case, literally the devil's advocate position here, because there's a whole lot of things. If you read the Bible, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah,
you can't have a good God do that shit. That's like the Bible, basically. But we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, that'd be a good
I just want to say that for right now. We don't propose to have some superior, look at how good we are for believing in the hipster way that maybe things are different than what the mainstream says. We don't claim to be superior or better than you or have any integrity more than any other curious scientist in the world. Just to clarify that once again, we really are just so curious, and there's a lot of things that we can see just by prodding it a little bit that it's like, that doesn't make sense.
We're wrong
about
about some things. This is a
100%.
rephrasing of what I said earlier. We're wrong about some things, but you should be worried about the person who says they have all the answers and they know everything.
Dogmatism again.
We're not that person. That's all.
I actually tend to think, this is about dogmatism again, but I tend to think that dogmatism is one of the most dangerous things that a person can fall into.
Dude, we could get into politics with that.
So I don't want
right now,
yeah.
but like, yeah. Fair.
So I listen to a lot of like Sam Harris. He's awesome. He's a great speaker.
Smart guy.
He's an avid detester of everything Bible.
Yeah.
For good reasons. And I think just reasons. But we also listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson. We think that guy is just so cool. And I listen. They've got lectures where they debate truth, essentially. And
very fun.
It's so fun because Jordan Peterson takes the position of defending the Bible, kind of like what we do. And
I don't say it's defending the Bible, not to shut your thing down, but he's defending the idea of
why we need the Bible.
Kind of like the metaphysical.
Exactly.
That's what he's defending.
He actually defends it more as a narrative on why we shouldn't divorce it from our culture.
Yeah. And
I tend to believe with that too, but I actually would take it a step further and defend some of it literally. But again, we'll do the Bible another day. That's going to be such a fun, interesting podcast when we do the Bible.
This has been interesting, by the way.
Yes, it's been so invigorating. I'm remembering things and but anyway, but when you listen to those lectures, it's not like I listen to Jordan Peterson and go, I agree with him more than Sam Harris, who's basically saying we don't need the Bible. But when I listen to Sam Harris, his his dislike for dogmatism is something that I'm like,
you understand it.
I understand it. And I agree with it so much because that's correct. It's okay to be afraid of a thing that a person believes so much that nothing else matters, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If theoretically, I'll defend dogmatism in this one way. Theoretically, if you had it, your dogma was the exact correct one, that was the exact best for every person, every living thing, for the culture, for the economy, for the universe. If you aligned perfectly with that and held that in a dogmatic way, you would be right. But nobody knows those things. So dogmatism is not a good way to do things.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Because anybody who believes that they're right is not anybody. Nobody's right. Nobody's completely right. Mm-hmm. The dangerous person is like the best villains in most stories. They think that they're right.
Exactly.
Anyway,
I'm actually
let's not talk about dogmatism too much. It is interesting though.
But I think dogmatism is a pretty integral part to talking about evolution versus intelligent design, because there's plenty on both. That's what we wanted to bring up about it. I'm so interested to see what people say about this episode.
Hopefully nice, collaborative.
If you hate it, tell us. Like not
about us, but to each other if they start.
Yeah. I don't us. Okay. Yeah. So what I don't want to see is people fighting to defend something. I really do want, even the comment section, let's explore the ideas.
Don't attack, just explain yourself, and hopefully we can all learn something.
I don't want people to feel like they have to explain themselves.
No,
for
not
their beliefs
defending.
either.
You said, what'd you say? You didn't say defend yourself.
Just explore. That's really it. It's like none of us know jack shit, and I think it's more fun that way. If everybody just says, "Hey, I don't know, but I was taught this growing up. I was taught that evolution was real, and it made sense to me."
That's what I mean by explain yourself. Just say what you think.
Exactly. Sorry, I wasn't saying that. That's not what you're saying.
Not defend yourself, and certainly don't need to attack anybody.
Yes, don't do that.
Because like dogmatism, one reason I detest it, if this is not too simplified, is I hate the idea of trying to make somebody believe or think something. That is just.
We can talk about belief another time, but it does seem like belief is more of a disposition than it is an adoption. Sometimes people adopt beliefs, but it's almost always aligned with their disposition ahead of time too. Like people have there's something about people naturally. It's kind of like what you believe politically, where you're natural.
Oh, you have a certain personality type.
Yes.
Therefore, in your brain.
Thank you for finishing that for me.
Yeah.
You said
it'd be easier for you to align with one political idea versus another. Yeah. That's your disposition.
You're right. That's it. I'm pointing to you. That's what I think I think a lot of it is your predisposition.
Yep.
This is interesting. We could keep talking about, do we want to defend the Bible? I don't think I've done a good job of that.
No.
And I don't think it's my job yet. Maybe some other time.
I don't think that is relevant enough to this conversation. You're talking about, in fact, I think we off a little bit on the dogmatism. Talking about evolution versus intelligent design, which is why I brought up the topic I talked about. Oh, which reminds me, I want to say, I also really do not like the idea and don't agree with the idea of human race, like race is like a color is a race, like Asian race. Like, what are you talking about? The human race, there's one race. In my belief system, we are literally the same thing. We're different, but the same. But does that even make sense in evolutionary terms?
Microevolutionary terms, because there's microevolutionary differences between people. Yeah. Sorry,
like if you fill out an application, what race are you? I'm like, why isn't human on here? Anyway, whatever.
That's like a cute, like corny T-shirt thing to say. Like, there's only one, and it's the human race. Like, I'd get a T-shirt, but I wouldn't probably wear it because it's just too corny,
a little too pretentious, and
well, it's right. I'm with you. I'm with you. Like seriously, like it is. It's like everybody's just people. Yeah. Even Even the whites. Even the whites are people.
No, you should feel bad for being a white person.
I don't want to even joke about it.
You couldn't even put in the energy to attack or to go with my sarcasm. It's just too bitter.
Well, I just know I don't really jokes. Yeah, jokes are meant to be funny, and if it's like too real,
oh shoot, okay,
there's some legit white people hate.
Well, you know what? Sometimes, a lot of times, laughing is the only way I can cope with some of this bullshit.
Yeah, hey, then we should make all the racist jokes we want right now. Let's just start from the top.
Hey, it's okay to make racist jokes against white people because that doesn't count for some reason. Because white people aren't people.
And it's funny, if you actually think about that, I'm gonna go ahead and do this with you. Here we go. What's funny is white people aren't technically even the majority in the world.
Yeah, that's hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's like it'd be one thing, and it would make they're majority in the country, and so I get why the American culture would be like shitting on white people, and I get it. I do get it because white people done some shitty things.
And to be fair, in almost any situation, it's fun to pick on or shit on a majority of anything.
Oh yeah, like nobody, like everybody loves the underdog.
Target. Exactly. Right. But that's not going to be the case forever.
Yeah. I'm not even saying stop. I'm not even saying stop shitting on white people. I think it's funny, and I go ahead. You know.
Anyway,
it's not
the reasons offensive. For it may not be quite so noble, but
yes.
Anyway, at one point, I wonder what's going to happen. Maybe I should wonder. Maybe no. Maybe we both know exactly what's going to happen. At some point, white people are not going to be the majority in America. What then? No, there's less and less white people because we're mixing so much. At some point, white people are not going to be the majority. Well, then what happens?
Well, then they're a bad minority.
That's probably exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if that actually will ever happen. I know what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of immigration, but we don't want to get into that.
I know I've saw statistics about the percentage of races in America, and it's going down.
Sure.
I was like, well, what's going to happen? I think they said we project by this year the whites will be a minority. Like, well, what happens then?
I think it's fine. Obviously you do too. We think it's going to be fine, but I do wonder culturally if people in the culture will get away from shitting on any race, which would be cool.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool.
But it's also optimistic.
Funny. It is also funny to joke about it, even if it's not funny to you. It is to somebody.
What I'm saying is shit on us white people while you can. Just keep it up, because at some point it's gonna be awkward. Like, dude.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
At some point, dude, I'm literally like the most. I'm extinct.
Oh boy. I don't know.
Right.
I think
we do get into a little bit much.
Yeah, we did. That doesn't really have much to do.
No, it doesn't.
I guess it technically has to do with evolution.
But not that much.
Yeah, we don't have to talk. Do we even want to talk about race as a topic at some point? We kind of just did.
I'm sure at some point we'll get into it.
I think you said
like
it well.
Racism and sexism and all that. All the isms and phobes and name calling. I'm sure sometime we'll get into that.
Yeah, we don't like it. Just so you guys know, we can joke, but we don't like it. And obviously, do we have anything else to go on with creation? We talked about the flood. We talked about the ark. More or less, those are the Bible things. Do we want to talk about dinosaurs? Like that we kind of said that.
Kind of did.
There's so much that could potentially, like, a lot of the things that happen in evolutionary history. To me, it's pretty obvious that could totally align in the same way in creationist type history. Anyway, I kind of talked about that, where I said I believe that, like, all the things that people observe and say that happened in history millions of years ago, I think I think it did happen, and I think it just didn't happen millions of years ago.
Yeah,
I think it happened pretty recent. I think 7,000 years is a whole lot longer of a time than people think.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot longer. Exactly. A lot can happen in 7,000. It could happen in 30 years here.
After 100 years, or no, how long? When did we land on the moon? In the 40s or 50s? Hasn't been 100 years yet. We have observable evidence, and we have people who don't believe it. And after 1,000 years, everything could go to shit. In 7,000 years, you better bet your ass cheeks that a lot can happen in that time.
In 300 years, we went from muskets and boats to planes that fly faster than the speed of sound, and people can shoot into space, and some of them want to go to another planet.
Yeah.
And like 300 years ago, it was virtually impossible for a group of 40 people to go from one country to another country across the ocean without dying of everything, like the cold.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't that weird? 300 years, that much changed. For sure, 7,000 years is a lot of time. Yeah. I'm not saying it is definitely 7,000 years. What he's saying
is we have the answers. We know everything, and that is how it is. Remember? You established that right away.
Yeah, I know everything. I'm saying I know. Again, it's like a little nerve-wracking talking about what you believe in this way, because it did get a little politicized, and people's jobs are on the line. Like, if you're a scientist, your job is on the line with this, and I don't want those people to lose jobs either.
Hey, people work in the church, and their jobs could be online. Imagine being a high position in a church, like a pastor of some kind, but you just you believe in evolution. I don't know, like, church doesn't want you there. It's just this level of religion and dogmatism. You have to believe this in order to work for us. I don't know. Which is unfortunate.
It is.
Wish it wasn't that way.
It is kind of parallel.
Parallel? I guess that's true.
Parallel in that they're not at all coinciding, but they work the same. That's what I mean by parallel. They're in conjunction with one another, even though it's opposite. Yes, there is, on both sides, people can lose their job if they believe differently.
That's true for a lot of things, actually, not just the origins of existence. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. But hey, if you work for somebody, you gotta do what they want. You are a slave to that person. Or company. It's just a different kind of slavery. That's interesting. Thank you for following us with that, and hopefully being generous with giving us a little bit of credit, because it's like a lot of stuff to try to remember, and we missed so much. Do you have any idea of how many things we missed? Do you have any idea?
No, I haven't been able to think. I think I've thought of most of the little things to talk about, but I haven't thought of other ones since. I'm sure there's more to talk about, but I can't think of them. And to be honest, I think that at the hour-long mark, we like hit them all pretty well. I mean, kind of went in some rants the last half hour.
Do we? Okay, so I think we're done then. Thank you for exploring with us.
Yeah, thanks for exploring with us.
Do we want to do a game? I kind of feels like I just made us have to.
Yeah,
because
we
I
have
said that.
Let's do a quick game.
All right, your voice. You pick for me a voice. I'll pick for you a voice.
Or am I trying to pick a voice that I think you're going to do well at?
Yeah. Let's do that.
I want to have a fun game.
Okay.
I already know what voice I want to do, but
for you?
Nope. But I can't say it. You have to pick for me.
All right.
I'm trying to think about what voice you'd want to do besides Patrick Warburton.
Yeah.
And besides Christopher Walken.
Yeah, besides
the two most
that
recent
too.
You did.
All right. I'll try to think of a different one for you too. Can you do...
I have one for you that I think you would enjoy doing.
Can you do whatever you quote? Can you do it in Timmy Two Shoes voice? The voice you made up?
Yeah, I guess that counts as a voice.
It's like a kid or whatever.
I know kind of what that character is.
What one do you want me to do?
You would enjoy doing Alan Rickman, would you not?
I'm bad at Alan Rickman, but I'd do it for you.
Okay, do you not want to? I can pick something else.
If you come up with one idea in the next 5 seconds and I like it better, I'll do it.
Okay, here we go. You want to do Goofy?
Okay, I'll try it. I can't do that one very well.
Okay,
either,
then just do Alan Rickman.
I'll do Goofy.
Okay.
Okay, what are we quoting? Goofy.
Are we both saying the same thing?
Sure.
What's coming to your head right now?
Let's pick song lyrics.
Song lyrics.
Yeah, song lyrics. Like
I don't know many songs that you know.
Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. Took the midnight train going anywhere.
Took the midnight. See, I didn't know that song. Took the midnight train going anywhere.
Say, just a small town girl living in a lonely world.
Just a small town girl. This you pick your song. It's too hard for me. I don't know this stuff.
You don't know that song? It's
Not really.
Journey. It's freaking Journey. Just a city boy.
Yeah.
Born and raised in South Detroit.
Well, since I don't know anything, I guess I'll just do what you tell me. I really don't have any other things to do.
I'll feed it to you and then you can copy.
No, you just say it. You just do yours, and
Okay.
I'll hope I remember the words. Do yours now.
Just a small town girl. Can't do Goofy.
Are you singing or just saying the words?
I could try singing. Living
just say
in
the
a
words.
lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. All right, go, you try that.
Just a small town girl living in a small town world. Took the midnight train anywhere.
Yeah.
They call me Timmy Two Shoes because my name's Timmy and I wear two shoes.
That's very cool. You pretty good job. You're just saying the word like this and you throw your hands up in the air.
I made that up like literally like this one day. I was like, my name's Timmy Two Shoes. They call me Timmy Two Shoes because I'm wearing. I think I said it when I was setting up my room. So my name's Timmy Two Shoes. They call me Timmy Two Shoes because my name is Timmy and I wear two shoes. Yeah. Whatever. And you heard me say it once and I was talking to myself, and I guess that's why I actually forgot about it.
I'm glad that you remembered and know what I was talking about because that line, that particular line, my name is Timmy Two Shoes. They call me Timmy Two Shoes because my name is Timmy and I wear two shoes.
Yeah.
It's just a funny thing to say that
it's
fast.
Fun. You say it. You can say that in some
in the voice.
Yeah.
My name is Timmy Two Shoes because my name is Timmy and and they call me Timmy Two Shoes because all right.
It's fun.
I don't want to do Goofy. I'll try that in Alan Rickman.
I want to try after you.
My name is Timmy Two Shoes. They call me Timmy Two Shoes because my name is Timmy and I wear two shoes.
That's a fun line. It's just like playing something on the piano.
Yeah.
And then you transpose it and play it or with a different instrument on the thing just to hear it differently, but it's just fun.
Yeah, it is. It sounds different.
Okay.
My name is Timmy Two Shoes. They call me Timmy Two Shoes because my name is Timmy and I wear two shoes.
You did it better. That's good.
It's not about doing it better. Just having fun here.
What?
I was going to say that's a fun little game unless you want some.
Do you want to do like one more in that same line?
Any line.
Any line? Okay.
Any voice, any line. I don't care.
Let me think of a line.
Such a ridiculous
You
line.
you think of a line, I'll think of actors. Okay. I got one for you.
Okay. What is it?
Ricky Gervais is your actor.
I don't
What's-
want to.
Yes.
But okay.
Yes.
All right. It's
I want
fair.
you to.
You picked. It's fair. It's an exchange.
What do you want for me to do?
I'm trying to think of something I don't think you want to do. Actually, I would like to do.
What?
I'd like to do. Oh, shoot. I forgot his name. He's an Australian comedian. I want to do his voice.
What about Hugh Jackman? Just be an Australian. Hugh Jackman.
I really want to do the comedian. I forgot his name, but it'd be funny if I just did it.
How about you doing the voice of an Australian comedian?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's stupid. Okay.
What's the line?
I don't know. I was talking
I
to you
thought
the
you
whole
said
time.
you had a funny line.
No.
All right, I'm gonna play music. You think of a line.
No, I can't think. Well, you may as well.
I'm gonna play music.
I know you'd be too bored, so I'll try to think. Okay, this is 2 lines, but I know you know them, which is the important thing. Hands off, that shiny shirt, that's mine. It's going to the great eye along with everything else.
Hey, can you be? It's going to the great eye along with everything else, and I'll do. Hey, hands off! That shiny shirt's mine.
Sure.
Okay. What am I doing? What voice am I doing?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'll do.
I picked my own, so you should pick your own.
Okay, let me think. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have been playing music.
It's okay.
I wanted to. It's been on this whole time, and I wanted to play it. Okay.
It's what sounds like fun.
Okay. I want to just be like a really quiet guy.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Okay.
what I'm gonna impersonate. Okay,
Who's going first?
me, because I'm saying, hands off that shiny shirt.
Okay, go ahead.
Hands off that shiny shirt. It's mine.
He's going to the great eye. I already forgot what he sounds like, along with everything else. I forgot his voice completely. I feel horrible.
The bum tried to knife me. Kill him. Rah. I'm trying to get things by you doing an Australian voice. Rah. Yeah.
It's funny because it wouldn't be raw, it'd be rah.
Rah. In Australian. That was fun.
It was horrible, actually.
It was terrible, but I'm glad I
horrible.
did it. I like being a quiet guy. I might try being a quiet guy more often.
You did a really good job with the quiet guy. I believe every word you said. Like, that guy is quiet.
That guy, that sounded just like a quiet guy.
Yeah.
I'm
That
a
was
good,
a really good impression of a quiet guy.
I'm a great quiet guy impersonator. That was fun. Thanks for talking to me about the beginning of the world. Thank you for joining us for everything in the world.
Yeah, you'll probably be here for the end of it.
The end of the
It's
world.
going to end very soon.
All right. On that note,
Uh,
thanks for listening.
yeah, thank you for listening to the listening show. We will see you guys later.
Indeed.
Bye.
3, 2, 1.